able to have a look, and I have noted, I have not made it yet, unfortunately, but we have noted that those people who visited your country come back very impressed. Now, this is the Foreign Affairs Committee, so I'm not asking so many domestic things, but you are situated between China and India, two large countries who are in some tension with each other over certain territories, and who are economically also competing on the global scale. And the question is, perhaps you can elaborate a bit on your economic and political relations with these two countries, and where you feel that the European Union in its policies towards India and China, whether you, from your direct perspective, whether you would suggest that we continue some frozen negotiations on a trade deal with China, or whether we resume these relations and trade talks with India. Have you any position on that? Thank you.
Short question, short answers.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for reminding. I thought this question will need a lot of time, but looks like Chair is going to be very strict with us. Anyway, good question. I know Bhutan is pegged right in between China in the north and India in the south. We share borders with only two countries, and we take a lot of pride in being geographically placed there. We know two countries, India and China, two of fastest growing economies in the world. Two biggest, most populated countries in the world. We have 1.4 billion up north and nearly 1.45 billion down south. Economy is nothing but a share of market. So if we can capitalize on this, Bhutan should be following in number three, I would say, in terms of economy. We have absolutely friendly relations with all the countries in the world, including our giant neighbors. I don't want to dwell into the differences they have, but with us, we have absolutely no issues down south with India and up north with China. That's why Bhutan, though pegged right in between China and India, we are able to go around, talk about the philosophy of cross-national happiness. I know by any standards, we are not the happiest countries in the world, but given the economic background that we have, given Bhutan being one of least developed countries, we are one of the happiest people on this planet, even though we have our own definition. We are one of the cleanest, most transparent societies or countries in that region. By any standard, level of corruption is one of the least. Being governed by human beings is not zero, but yet it is at minimum level. So with this, I'm very happy. I'm personally very happy, and I feel proud that we are pegged between China and India. As I said, two leading economies in the world, and we must be able to take advantage of this. So we have no issues with this. India definitely is the largest trading partner, but second trading partner that Bhutan has is China, rightly so. So thank you very much for your questions, sir. If there are any follow-up questions, I'll be more than happy to take.
Thank you. Next is Nacho Sanchez Samoa.
Yeah, thank you, David. Thank you, Prime Minister. As you are going to see, we are very interested in your foreign affairs relations. I would like to tackle more or less the same issues, but with more precise tackle. How about your minor dispute on cross-border delimitation with China, and some concerning news about some operations in the disputed territory? And the other issue is you recover or you regain your full foreign policy sovereignty in a very recent year after this not so usual framework in which India was charged in part to take care of your foreign relations. How did you disengage from India and create your own foreign policy? Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think these are all related. I know it is being covered in many different ways on the dialogues that we have been having, Bhutan is having with China on border issues. I wouldn't even like to qualify it in this issue. We have some sections of the boundaries between the two countries that is not identified as the landmark. The landmarks are not clearly delineated or identified. So if you consider that as dispute, I will leave it there. But we, between the two countries, do not have any major issues. Of course, we need to sit down, physically identify, put the pegs between North and South in China and Bhutan, and be agreeable on that. On that, we have had a couple of rounds of talks on this. The latest one was a month back that Bhutanese delegation went up to China. They agreed on certain steps and procedures to follow. What we are waiting for now is the Chinese delegation to come visit us. And then once we finalize that, the last bit will be to physically delineate the boundary between the two countries. Until now, we have had no issues, and I don't think there should be any issues on this. Of course, my answer will not be complete if I do not mention on the disputed tri-junction, Doklam issue that many of you may have heard. That is the point where Bhutan, southwest, southeast, India, southwest, and northern side China. The three countries meet at that point. That needs to be sorted out, and on that, Bhutan has only 1/3 say on that, since we are one of the three countries joining on that point. So we'll have to wait and see. All three parties will have to agree on an understanding. So rest bilateral issues, we do not have any issues. The borders that we have with India is roughly about 750 kilometers, which we don't have any issues. Every single meter is identified and pegged. We could not, as I said, do that with the northern border, which we are going to do it. So that's my answer.
Thank you.
Yes, the second part, the foreign policy part. I think this is. I'm a doctor. I'm a urologist by profession. So sorry if I'm not being very diplomatic. I'm not so used to it. This is my 4th year in politics and 4th year in governance. And since as a surgeon, I've been trained to cut straight. So I've cut straight. You can take you from a developmental milestone of a child. A child grows. A child learns how to take first few steps and falls down, and then learns how to walk and run, and then learns to talk, and then slowly go on to be a full-fledged individual. So for Bhutan, we are so grateful to all the neighbors, all the well-meaning partners in the world, similarly to India, who guided us, supported us, and we are still receiving a lot of technical support, a lot of monetary support from them. And in 2007, we revised our understanding with them that as we grow, they're happy to let us run around and be a grown individual now. So I think it's just the milestone of a good exemplary relation between the giant and the small neighbor. So we are happy with whatever is happening. And in 2008 onwards, His Majesty the King, the 4th King, we have the 5th King on the throne currently, but the 4th King enforced upon us that the form of government be changed. So since 2008, we had a full-fledged, democratically elected government in place. I'm the 3rd democratically elected Prime Minister, which, as many of you may not know, that His Majesty the King went round the country talking to people about how we should be able to vote for a party that we want the country to be governed by. And all of us, including myself, objected on that. We were so happy. We still are happy with the monarchy that we used to have. But His Majesty the King did not listen to us. He wanted a democratically elected government. And currently, His Majesty the King is guiding the success of democracy in Bhutan. So if it interests you, you may like to find more details on this. Since the chair is not going to allow me to elaborate on this, I'll leave it here. Thank you very much for your question, sir.
Thank you. Next is Petros Ostrevichus.
Thank you, Chair. Honorable Prime Minister of Bhutan, Most welcome to the European Parliament. It's a pleasure for us, to see countries from different parts of the world. But humankind is facing with more and more common problems: depletion of resources, environment, pandemics, wars and aggressions, and so on and so forth. Prime Minister, coming from very peaceful and happiness-based country, as you said in your introductory words, what is your formula for happiness? What the humankind might learn from Bhutan in this regard? Making the people more resilient and probably relaxed and more cooperating rather than fighting.
Thank you, Petros. May I add my question? Prime Minister, you went to Berlin before you came to Brussels. You met Chancellor Scholz. There was wide media coverage in Germany about your world-famous branding for gross national happiness. Perhaps you could explain to colleagues how you define happiness in Bhutan. I thought that was very interesting what you told me yesterday.
Again, thank you. I don't know how to answer this question because, as we all know, happiness is very, very subjective. And those who are alcoholic and dependent
на вашата страна. И сега въпросът ми е малко провокативен, за което се извинявам. Не знам дали Бутан е ратифицирал Римския статут на Международния наказателен съд. По моя предварителна информация това не е направено. Не сте членове на тази група, които са приели решенията на Международния наказателен съд. И в този контекст е и моят въпрос. Ако, например, руският президент Владимир Путин поиска убежище във вашата страна, бихте ли го приели? Благодаря.
Well, very good. Thank you very much, my good friend from Bulgaria. I'm happy to know that you have a small place called Bhutan in your country, and definitely 100%, when I don't know, but we will definitely, I would like to visit, so take it for sure. I would like to come and see if there are some Bhutanese living in the Bhutan in Bulgaria. So, yes. And then, of course, after visiting your place and after finding out if there are some Bhutanese looking people there, we'll go into the genetic studies after that. And I know, as I started off, one of my main reasons for this is actually, as much as I want to sit down and take questions and be able to share our feelings, my main reason, as I shared with the Honorable Chair, is to thank you all for the unconditional support that we received. And vaccination definitely is one. A lot of well-meaning member countries from the EU supported us, and we actually got more than what we required, because ours is a very small population, as I said, just 700,000, and eligible to be vaccinated 5 years and above, roughly around 5.5 lakhs. So we received more than what we required, and thank you very much for that. In terms of international instruments, I think one needs to study us very closely, study any nation's progress very closely. If any nation has accessed, agreed to these international instruments more rapidly than Bhutan, then we would like to study that country. For us, we are happy with the way we are going. We have to study everything very closely, see how it benefits us and how it doesn't harm any other countries in the world. So on that note, we are progressing. We are being very, very progressive. As I said, one of the youngest democracies in the world. I am the third democratically elected Prime Minister speaking, but yet we are a member to lots of these international instruments. So in terms of that specific question, we are a Buddhist country, we are a GNH-based country, and whatever we do, whatever we decide, will be fully based on how it benefits the world. As long as it benefits the world, we will not worry about how much Bhutan will be benefited by this. So I have no specific answers to the last question, but we are a very, very well-meaning country filled with very well-meaning Bhutanese or people of Bhutan. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you. Ulrike Müller is next for Renew.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Could you please use your headset if it's possible? I will speak in German. Herr Premierminister, vielen herzlichen Dank, dass Sie das Europäische Parlament besuchen. Ich bin Mitglied der Delegation von South Asia und durfte letztes Jahr zum ersten Mal Ihr Land besuchen. Und mich verbindet eine tiefe Freundschaft mit Ihrer Außenstaatssekretärin Pema Chodron, die ja heute hier dabei ist. Sie war ja lange Zeit unsere Botschafterin für Bhutan hier im Europäischen Parlament. Als wir Ihr Land besuchten, haben wir von den Reformen des öffentlichen Dienstes erfahren. Dieser Transformationsprozess ist jetzt ja eingeleitet. Sie haben jetzt dieses Gesetz in Kraft gesetzt. Wissen Sie inzwischen oder können Sie schon erste Auswirkungen dieser Reform feststellen? Es ist ja die Verwaltung intensiv betroffen. Und nach unserem ersten Mission zu Bhutan haben wir doch intensiv auch diskutiert. Sie haben Ihr Land wieder für Touristen geöffnet. Tourismus ist ein wichtiger Bereich in Bhutan. Allerdings haben Sie jetzt eine Touristengebühr von $200 pro Tag eingeführt. Sehen Sie hier jetzt schon Auswirkungen? Sie haben ja eine bestimmte Anzahl von Touristen, die nur in das Land gelassen werden. Sehen Sie einen Nutzen dieser hohen Gebühr? Und was ich gerne noch ansprechen möchte, ich bin ja im engen Austausch mit Ihrem Agrarministerium, weil ich auch Koordinatorin im Agri-Ausschuss bin. Und ich möchte dies auf jeden Fall fortfahren und wir werden hier einen Online-Austausch weiter pflegen, weil ich glaube, es ist im Moment schwierig, auch für den Minister nach Europa zu reisen. Es sind ja enorme Kosten, die hier auf ihn zukommen. Vielen herzlichen Dank und alles Gute für Ihr Land.
Vielen Dank, Frau Müller. Prime Minister.
Thank you very much, madam. In fact, as I entered this hall, you came towards us and I thought you came to hug me, but I realized you came to hug my foreign secretary. And that shows how close you are. Mrs. Pema Chodron was our ambassador to Brussels, one of shining stars in the country, a well-performing Bhutanese bureaucrat. I'm very happy to have her in my team. And I'm happy that she had developed a lot of goodwill ambassadors for Bhutan at the EU here. In terms of transformation, I don't think I'll have the time to elaborate everything in detail, but Bhutan is going through some very, very interesting, exciting, and a critical moment in our history. As I go around in the country, I tell everyone here at the embassy, wherever I travel, in Berlin, whoever I meet, Bhutanese group, I always tell them to follow what Bhutan is doing now, because maybe a decade down the line, when we read Bhutan's history, what we are going through now will definitely stand out, because we have realized that what we are doing now, the standards that we follow now, is not ready to take up the challenges of 21st century. Say, for example, education. It's absolutely free. School enrollment is almost 100 if you're coming in a group, and 110 USD if you're coming by yourself or in a very small group of ones or twos. So we are increasing it by $90 more because we want to ensure.
These are Ms. Alametse, Mr. Cholos, and Mr. Lega. These three, and we'll take them in a group, and then the final round of you, Prime Minister. Ms. Alametse.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Honorable Prime Minister of the Kingdom of Bhutan. It's an honor to be here. And I would like to ask clarification also for a few things. I think it's a wonderful thing that you have the Bhutan's concept of the Gross National Happiness Index that you mentioned. And I was wondering what kind of work do you do to push this kind of initiative to the whole world so that we could measure happiness in a better way? And I would also like to ask about the situation of the UN Human Rights Conventions ratified by Bhutan. I was wondering what kind of plans you have to ratify the 9 international human rights conventions. I gather you have ratified 2 so far. And also I would like to ask you what kind of measures you take to improve the gender equality in Bhutan, as there is, for example, in many countries in Europe as well, and also in Bhutan, a low representation of women in political decision making, for example. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Dacian Cholos.
Thank you, Prime Minister, being here. I'm Dacian Cholos from Romania, and I have 2 short questions. You mentioned that you are more surgeon than diplomat, and you are very direct and sharp. So I would like to know, taking into account your values in terms of what means happiness, how do you perceive our culture in Europe, and what is important, what do you think it's good, what do you think we have to improve in our way of life in this part of the world, let's say, taking into account the way that you perceive the relation with the European Union. And the second question, how do you see the influence of digitalization and artificial intelligence in your culture, in your society, and in your way of life in the future? How do you are prepared or not to manage the impact with digitalization, with artificial intelligence for you? Thank you.
Thank you, Dacian. And finally, David Lega.
Yes, thank you, Prime Minister, for coming here and also for challenging us with new ways of thinking. I applaud that. I have a question also on the happiness index perspective. Do you also break it down in different target groups? For example, I'm the co-chair of the Children Rights Intergroup, so we focus a lot on children, but in this perspective also children with disabilities. I know that you passed a new Persons with Disabilities Act a few years ago, and that you now also give free access to education for children with disabilities, which I applaud. But do you in that perspective also see a stronger increase in the happiness index for people with disabilities? Because that would be an interesting perspective for us to use in other parts. Thank you.
Right. Thank you, colleagues. And to sum up once again, Prime Minister.
Thank you for giving us this opportunity to comment on very important issues, I would say, as we round up the discussion. And please allow me to answer in a very haphazard manner for the 3 questions. On support of children with disabilities, I think my good friend rightly said that we have approved a policy to support persons with disability. We will be implementing that in a phased manner, because as we all know, anything to do to support persons with disability, it comes at a huge cost. As simple as infrastructure. Currently, none of the private or public infrastructures, buildings in Bhutan has disabled persons friendliness, because these are built in a very conventional manner. Now, all buildings that we want to construct from here on should have access to this, but it comes at a cost. Schools, for example, we have schools dedicated for children with special needs, but we need good all-round support. Infrastructure, facilities, trainers, sustaining the absolutely free healthcare system that we are giving. And through this,
Prime Minister, the European Union has been and will remain a reliable partner of Bhutan in the current challenging geopolitical dynamics on the international scene. Colleagues, I thought this was a remarkable exchange of views. We wish you a further successful visit to the European Union.
Started in 1960s and 70s.
Institutions, you'll be meeting a lot of important people, and then a safe flight back home to your great country.